What's up, gang? Andrew Cooper here. Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco with Fantasy Alarm, sponsored by our buddies at FFPC. And boy, oh boy, it has been crazy in free agency. I always hype it up. I wrote 32 articles. We've done videos, hour-long videos on every division. So I'm deep in the free agency no matter what. So I get hyped about it. I did not know it was going to be this crazy. This is the craziest it's ever been. I do the tracker. It's usually like boop, 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 a couple guards, a couple tackles, and then we move through. No. This is the craziest it's ever been. I have the documentation. So if you think it's crazy, you're right. What's up, everybody in the chat? Rex, everybody popping in. Thank you guys for hanging out. Today, here's what we're going to do. We did all the work in advance, right? We sat down and we looked at every single team and wrote an article on every team, did a video on covering every team. And we said, here's what could happen. Here's how it could affect fantasy. Now what we're going to do is go through. And since most of the running backs and the wide receivers and everything have signed, then we can now look at it and predict what might happen in the draft and see who's going to make it through the gauntlet of the offseason to be fantasy relevant, right? In Dynasty, we want to collect as much talent as possible, but for short-term fantasy, opportunity is king. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at who could have the opportunity, who could survive this and come out on the other side as a better asset, and who might have gotten buried a little bit. Sorry, Mr. Cole Kmet, who might be piled under targets at this point. If you want to see my thoughts on every signing, I'm running a tracker over at fantasyalarm.com. That's free. And there's honestly never a better time to sign up for Fantasy Alarm and become a member than right now. And I'll tell you why. Because if you get set up now, you can get the annual membership 40% off. And if you do the annual, it'll cover you all the way through football season, all the way through baseball season. Basketball and hockey are now in fantasy playoffs. So you're essentially all the way through fantasy basketball and fantasy hockey. And it gets you all our DFS picks, all our betting picks for 10 sports, not just those 4 big ones. We do everything. We do WNBA. We have the best NASCAR guy in Matt Sells. We have a killer UFC guy. We do golf. We do everything, man. So go over to fantasyalarm.com right now. If you go fantasyalarm.com/win and do the annual, 40% off right now. And it gets you in the Discord. We're going to start doing NFL best ball drafts next week. Spoiler to all the crazies. Rex, I know you're going to be in there. We're getting started next week on the family best ball drafts. And I got a little surprise for you that I'm hoping to roll out today. Some badges for the people that won last year. We're trying to spice things up a little bit. So Gator J, Ani Coop, thank you for joining us. We got to get to this. I wanted to do every single team today, but I talked with the producer, Matt Deutsch. He's like, dude, that's not possible. Too long-winded, right? 32 teams, and we try to do it in an hour. Sometimes we go a little over, but we try and do it in an hour. If we did 32 teams, it's only 2 minutes per team, right? So what we're going to do today is just look at the NFC teams. Ani Coop is in the house, so we had to go with the Rams and her squad. So let's get to it right now and start looking. What we're going to do is I'm going to talk about the moves that were made. I'm going to talk about the opportunity available to the guys on the team currently. And then we're going to look at the draft picks and see who could come in and screw things up for us, right? We're going to specifically look at the top 3 rounds because the hit rate on day 3 picks is not good. I don't want to get too far into it, but when you go through and even take the hits from day 3 picks, of course, there's a couple Puka Nakuas and Amon-Ra St. Browns, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is the best 4th round wide receiver since Brandon Marshall going back to 20 years ago, right? Like Jameson, in between Brandon Marshall and Amon-Ra St. Brown, the best wide receiver drafted in the 4th round is Jamison Crowder, right? So we're going to look at the top 3 rounds. I've got the ticker on the bottom. Matt Deutsch was nice enough to set that up. And we're also going to put them on the screen when we're talking about each team. So why don't we get into it? We'll go alphabetical order. First team, Arizona Cardinals. Matt, if you could pull that up and kind of give everybody a look at what we got going on here. So the movement for the Cardinals, we talk about opportunity, and opportunity being king. There's no place with better opportunity right now than this one, right? Wendy, what's happening? Thanks for popping in. So the Cardinals, they traded away Rondale Moore. He's been traded to the Falcons. Marquise Brown signed a prove-it deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. 1 year, $7 million. He's trying to show he can be healthy, show that he can play at a high level and get paid next year. I mean, look what Juju did on the Chiefs. 900 yards. He got paid $33 million, right? Like $20 million guaranteed. All Marquise Brown does is have to just be okay. He could collect a ring and make himself a lot of money. So I don't mind the move for Marquise Brown. 1 year, $7 million. Obviously, the rich get richer. The Cardinals, So they lost Moore, they lost Brown. They didn't bring anybody in. They brought in DJ Dallas, who is a decent backup, but what they paid him to do is return kicks. He's a great kick returner, so that's the situation there. So this team, as you can see on the ticker, they're picking at 4, they're picking at 27, 35, 66, 71, 90. All those spots could be fantasy relevant. For quarterbacks, you want to see them picked in the first or second round. We don't have to worry about that here. For wide receivers, third round, not bad hit. For running backs and tight ends, you can even go fourth and fifth, but ideally first 3 rounds. So, I mean, the way I look at it is this. They've got Michael Wilson as a big split end. They picked in the third round. They've got Greg Dortch, who can play the Rondell Moore role. And then after that, they don't have much. Of course, they have Trey McBride at tight end, so we don't expect them to do anything at tight end. Trey McBride, like they would have to go out for Trey McBride not to be fantasy relevant and to get vaporized here. They would have to go out and potentially draft 2 high-end wide receivers or draft one and then also sign Tyler Boyd. I mean, how do you push him out of that top 2 chair? I don't think it happens. That's why Trey McBride, I have him ranked real high for fantasy football. I honestly, in Dynasty, in full PPR, I have him ahead of Sam Laporta. I know it's blasphemous because Sam Laporta is my guy. I'm sitting here with a pile of Sam Laporta cards right here next to me. There's Sammy right there. But I mean, like, the reality is that opportunity for him, it can't be just pushed away. Even if they take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. And for Dynasty and for fantasy, if this team takes Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, that's my wide receiver 1. If they make Malik Neighbors the top wide receiver off the board, he'll be my wide receiver 1. It's like, are we really going to disagree with them and rank another guy after the guy if they take him the first wide receiver off the board? It's risky. I mean, people wanted to do that with Jerry Jeudy when CeeDee Lamb went ahead, and that didn't work out very well. Personally, I think if this team picks a wide receiver there, I'm going to respect that pick and make that guy my top wide receiver. Unless, I mean, if they go crazy and take like Xavier Worthy, trying to, maybe Jonathan Gannon looked at Devonta Smith and says, let's get our own Devonta Smith, then maybe I stick with Marvin Harrison Jr. But I'm hoping they do the right thing, take Marvin Harrison Jr. and just confirm what we want them to do. So they, wide receiver at 4 could be the pick, but also you look at 27, 35, 66, they could take another wide receiver. We've seen plenty of teams double tap it. They could also take a running back somewhere in there. James Conner's getting up there. I personally don't like to see that. I like to see teams when they're ready to compete, then you go for the running back, but maybe. What I do know is they probably won't take a quarterback. They probably won't take a tight end. So it's wide receiver for fantasy relevant, and then maybe running back, and they'll probably load up on defense because that's what Jonathan Gannon likes. Obviously, every team needs offensive line. So that's the Arizona Cardinals. That's what we're looking for. And man, Michael Wilson, the opportunity, even if they bring in Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm liking the situation for Michael Wilson and for Trey McBride because the opportunity is now there when it really wasn't amazing before. So next team here, we're going alphabetical order by city. So that was the Arizona Cardinals. Coming up next, Atlanta Falcons. So get the Falcons up on the screen there. They have some draft capital themselves. They have picks 8, 43, 74, and 79. So let's talk about the moves they did. Mega moves. Obviously, the big one here, Kirk Cousins, right? We love the assets. We love Drake London. We love Kyle Pitts. We love Bijan Robinson. What did they need? What was the perfect thing for them? A pocket passing quarterback that has no interest in running it himself. Kirk Cousins, coming off a torn Achilles, is going to be the least mobile quarterback in the league. He already pretty much was. It was basically him and Goff. Yeah, I see you in the chat, Jeremy. Did they sign anyone big? Shout out the Reddit community and Jeremy over there, dude. They do a good job. But yeah, they did. Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, great news for Drake London. Drake London, last year, led the entire league with 17 contested catches, right? So this guy was already doing it the hard way. And now he comes in and gets an upgraded quarterback, a guy that can sit in the pocket, deliver the football. Great for him. Kyle Pitts, people are like, oh, Arthur Smith didn't throw it to him. He got 90 targets last year, right? That's top 10 for tight ends. He tied George Kittle. Like Kyle Pitts, it's wheels up for him now too. And Bijan Robinson, not only does a better offense mean more touchdowns, right? But now we're in a situation where Kirk Cousins will actually dump it down, right? So that's the big move, Kirk Cousins. On top of that, Johnny Smith, they cut him. He ended up with the Dolphins. I think that's a smart move by the Dolphins, specifically because they got a bunch of guys that left, and they're going to collect comp picks. Like they're going to get a third-round comp pick for Robert Hunt. third-round comp pick for Christian Wilkins. So they don't want to sign incoming free agents that might cancel that out. Jonnu Smith was cut, so he doesn't count against the formula. Same with Jordan Poyer. We'll talk about the Dolphins next week, but yeah, I'm liking. They lost a lot of guys, but they're kind of scrapping it together. They're doing their best. They also lost Mac Hollins. He went to Buffalo, but they replaced him with an upgrade, in my opinion, with Darnell Mooney. 3 years, $39 million for the field stretcher. Same deal that Gabe Davis got, right? That seems to be the agents just decided, like, okay, you want a field stretching flanker, 3 years, $39 million, either one. Take your pick. And Darnell Mooney, I will say this. People are giving Tony Pollard a pass because he had the high ankle sprain and he had surgery. He had the tightrope surgery, right? So he had they said that Tony Pollard wasn't feeling right until week 11. Well, Darnell Mooney had the same exact injury, same exact surgery. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt to a certain degree. But in my opinion, the top two pass catchers on the team are Drake London and they are Kyle Pitts, which means Mooney's kind of on the outside looking in. I think he's an all right best ball pick, but in redraft and dynasty, I'm not really going to trust him in my lineups unless one of London or Pitts gets hurt or falls completely flat. So there you go. They also traded for Rondale Moore. Like this team loading up, that's going to be their slot. So last year, Arthur Smith used so many fullbacks and tight ends that they didn't really need wide receivers. It wasn't a normal offense. Now they're going back to normal offense. Drake London is going to be your split end. Your flanker, field stretching flankers, Darnell Mooney. Rondale Moore is your slot wide receiver. Kyle Pitts is your tight end. Charlie Warner is your jumbo blocking tight end. And I think that's a great addition as well. I actually really love what the Falcons did here. And not to mention Gator J in the chat mentioning Ray McLeod, great return guy. I mean, like they went out and did what they had to do. And now that they have a complete offense in terms of weapons, in my opinion, they can go out and spend all this draft capital. As you see on the screen, picks 8, 43, 74, 79, offensive line and defense. Offensive line and defense and just and complete it, man, and complete it. So yeah, I love what they've done, and I think this team is ready to rock and roll right now. So pretty good stuff from the Atlanta Falcons. Next team here, Carolina Panthers. I have no idea if I'm on pace or not to hit all 16 teams, but we're going to do our best, right? We're just going to, the information is most important. I'll hang a little bit late if we have to, just to make sure we get the information out and we get into a position to make moves. But just for fantasy, just to wrap up the Falcons, I'm trading 4 Pitts. I'm trading 4 London. I'm trading 4 Bijan. This is probably a good sell window for Darnell Mooney or Rondale Moore if anyone's excited about the movement. Unless you really don't like London or Pitts and you think Mooney's going to get a ton of targets or Rondale Moore's going to get a ton of targets. But I think it's a good sell window for those guys. Just anytime things get shaken up a little bit, people get excited. So go ahead and do that. But we really want guys that are top 2 targets on the team. We want focal points. So Moondog, he's a good real life addition for the team, but maybe not for fantasy so much. Carolina Panthers is the next team up here. We can pull them up. Oh, Matt's already ahead of it. Picks 33 and 65. They would have had pick number 1, right? If you do the math, 33 is the first pick of the second round, 65 the first pick of the third round. They should have had pick 1, but they traded it to the Bears for Bryce Young. What they did, though, is they went out and they made conditions better for Bryce Young, right? Got rid of the other coaches, got rid of the old GM, and they went out, they traded for Deontay Johnson. Boom. Gotta love that, right? Rex says skip the Panthers. I'm not skipping the Panthers. I think we could see a little bit of a bounce back here. We could see a better season for Bryce Young, right? We give, talk about giving people passes. We gave Trevor Lawrence a pass for the Urban Meyer, bar time disaster. So we can give Bryce Young a little bit of a pass. They fired the entire coaching staff in front office. So I think we can give Bryce Young at least a little pass. Now, if he falls flat this year with Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson, they also went out and they spent $150 million on 2 guards, Robert Hunt for $100 million and Damian Lewis. So they're beefing up the line too. So if Bryce Young takes a step forward, then I honestly wouldn't be surprised. And then they can finish off getting more assets after that. So Adam Thielen's targets are probably pretty, Deontay Johnson's probably he's going to lead this team in targets almost certainly. He's in my opinion, a buy. I mean, I know he's never had a great quarterback, but I think Bryce Young, in my opinion, has higher upside than Kenny Pickett ever had. Kenny Pickett never even threw like 8 touchdown passes in the season. You know what I mean? So I'm liking Deontay Johnson here. Our guest on Wednesday, Josh Larkey, was loving Deontay Johnson too. We're liking we're liking Adam Thielen still, at value. He'll get some targets. And after that, with this draft capital, I mean, they brought back Amir Smith Marset, who's probably going to, he's probably going to mostly return kicks and punts. So with this draft capital, at 33 or 65, they could take another wide receiver. They could take a tight end. Hayden Hurst left to join the Chargers. They could take a running back too, right? We'll have to see with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders if the new regime can figure that out. But yeah, I like it, man. And yeah, Jeremy, the defense, I think the offensive interior line, upgrading that is the biggest thing for this team. For fantasy, we obviously care about Deontay Johnson, but Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, those are good gets. So Panthers, kind of interesting. This is one where if they do draft a wide receiver that we really like at like 33, that would kind of be the nail in the coffin for Adam Thielen, right? And again, we have to see what happens with Jonathan Mingo, but he's probably the odd man out, probably playing mostly big slot, but he's probably the guy that comes out of the game when they bring in a fullback or an extra tight end. So again, that's going to be Thielen versus Mingo, and I think Thielen wins that battle every time. And if they draft another wide receiver at 33, which you have to remember, pick 33, that's where Michael Pittman went. Michael Pittman and T. Higgins went back-to-back picks 33 and 34 to start the second round. So that pick at 33 is absolutely a spot where you could get a star wide receiver if they chose to do so. But, I think they're going to just ride with what they have. So there you go. Drafting a running back would be something they might do, but not entirely necessary. Next team, Chicago Bears. They pick at number 1 overall. Boy, this team, one of the most interesting one. Now I see why people were saying skip the Panthers in the chat, because the Bears we want to talk about this team right here. They just went out, fresh news, of course, traded for Keenan Allen. And at first I looked at the 4th round pick and I was like, that's low, but you have to remember they have to pay him $23 million. So that rules out a ton of teams right off the bat, right? And then because he's a 10-year veteran, if he were to walk next year, you don't get a good comp pick back. The max comp pick you can get for 10-year vets when they walk is a 5th, right? So it's not like the Chargers could have just waited and let him walk and got like a 3rd or 4th anyway. It was maxed at a 5th, right? The Bears, no team obviously offers a 3rd, and the Bears' 4th round pick is a pretty high pick because the Bears were terrible last year. So I could see why he ended up there. Same thing with Montez Sweat. When they got Montez Sweat, they were one of the worst teams in the league. The Falcons offered a 2nd too, but the Bears are worse than the Falcons, which is bad. And that's how they got Montez Sweat. So that's how Brian Poles is pulling off these deals. His team was so bad that his picks are really valuable, which is nice for him. So Keenan Allen, big move. DeAndre Swift, big move, right? He comes in, and I warned you guys, if you go back and watch the NFC North video where we were going through and talking about what might happen, I warned that Roschon Johnson, one of the most volatile assets in all of fantasy football, because he could be the starting running back, but if they sign somebody, now he's not only the backup now, but he's under contract for 3 years. So they signed DeAndre Swift for 3 years to be the starter for 3 years, and Roschon's the backup for 3 years, unless he's just incredible and breaks out in a big way. Khalil Herbert at least can walk away next year when he's a free agent, right? But so not a good situation for Roschon. His value got crushed here, man, and that's the reality of the roulette wheel of free agency and the draft. So, and you were sitting here saying Zamir White, all these guys are safe. Well, there's still the draft, so be very careful there. They also signed Gerald Everett. So Cole Kmet, talk about guys whose opportunity got absolutely squished. Cole Kmet went from being the number 2 target on the team behind DJ Moore to now, when we try and suggest who's going to do what on this team and who's going to get the targets, you could say it's DJ Moore, you could say it's Keenan Allen, but those guys are 1 and 2, right? And then Gerald Everett's a dude who's never blocked a day in his life. So when you're when you're Shane Waldron and you're figuring out how you're going to rotate tight ends, and he has rotated tight ends with the Seahawks, and before that with the Rams when they had Higbee and Gerald Everett. Shane Waldron has coached Gerald Everett multiple times now in Seattle and with the Rams. You're not going to have Gerald Everett as the inline tight end. So Cole Kmet is going to be doing the blocking work. Gerald Everett's going to be doing the slot work, running the routes. Cole Kmet his value got absolutely vaporized. And this is a guy that finished back-to-back tight end 7 in fantasy football very quietly. Man, he's untradeable all of a sudden. So tough situation there. It's just, So this is how bad it is. If they just brought in Keenan Allen, his value would have been dust, but they also brought in Gerald Everett. Right? So they lost Darnell Mooney, but got Keenan Allen, so who cares? And then at 1, we expect them to draft a QB unless spicy time. What if they don't? What if they don't draft a quarterback? What if they just stick with Justin Fields like they did last year, and then they can go out at 1, they can trade back and get, linemen. They can beef everything up. I don't know what they're going to do for sure. I do expect them to trade Justin Fields, but boy, they could have 3 picks in the first round if they trade back, and they already have 9. They have 1, 9, and 75. And now they don't necessarily have to draft a wide receiver, but they might still. So in Dynasty, I'm not going to fade any wide receiver they draft because, with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Godwin, sometimes these guys have to wait their turn, but we would fade them in redraft because Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are superstars, right? So if they draft a wide receiver, so let's say at 9, this team drafts Malik Neighbors, right? I'm not fading them in Dynasty. I'm still drafting them at Dynasty. If he's the second wide receiver off the board, he's going to be my second wide receiver still, right? But in Dynasty, sometimes you got to wait on these guys. In redraft, I would fade them. I would fade the player for sure. So just got to be very careful, man. Yeah, we talked about Swift, Rex. We talked about how it kind of smoked. Oh, as a pass catcher. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So Swift can catch passes. Roshan can catch passes. I mean, and with mobile-ish QBs, they don't dump it down as much anyway. But yeah, Cole Kmet, moment of silence. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys, they have not done much, and the fans are pissed because Jerry Jones came out and he said, we're going to be all in this year. Yip, skiddly do, howdy, yeehaw, Jerry Jones. But they haven't done anything, and I'll tell you why. There's 3 parts to this. One is that they don't have a lot of cap space. 2 is that they have to figure out what they're doing with Tyron Smith because they need to allocate that money to another tackle if he's not going to stay. And 3 is they're being very cautious with the compensatory pick formula. I wrote an entire article on this. It's up for free over at fantasyalarm.com, or just Google, if you go Google Fantasy Alarm, why aren't the Cowboys signing anybody? The reality for a lot of these teams is that, quick lesson on compensatory picks. Stick with me here. The way it works is they've created a system to balance free agency. So if you lose a high-end player, a qualified player, they'll give you a pick. And depending how important that player is, the pick will be somewhere between a 3rd and a 6th round pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. So the Dolphins, for instance, lost Robert Hunt in $100 million contract. They'll get back a 3rd round compensatory pick. But if you sign incoming free agents, they cancel each other out, right? So the max you can get is 4. If you let 4 guys leave and don't sign anyone, you can get 4 comp picks, right? And you can get a 5th one for an executive if he leaves, but let's not even make it more complicated than it needs to be right now. So last year, the 49ers got 4 comp picks for letting guys like Jimmy G and all these guys leave and not signing anybody. So right now, the Cowboys have lost Dorrance Armstrong and Tony Pollard, and they lost another guy, Tyler Biadasz, the center. Those guys are all going to bring back somewhere between a 4th, 5th, 6th round comp pick. If they were to sign Darnell Mooney, right? Like, let's say you're going to get a 4th round comp pick. You sign Darnell Mooney to 3 years, $39 million. That not only costs you 3 years, $39 million, but it also costs you a 4th round pick now. So that's why the Cowboys are being very careful here, because if they lose Tyron Smith and Stephon Gilmore, now they've lost 5 players, and they can sign a big player and not lose a comp pick. But they have to wait and see what happens there. So with Tyron Smith is really holding the whole thing up. So I wouldn't judge the Cowboys just yet. I know they've missed out on the free agents that have already signed, but they could turn around when that happens and go bing bang boom and sign Tyler Boyd and whatever the best running back is. It's not really many of them out there anymore, like Alexander Madison or whatever, but they could still scrap this together. You know what I mean? So we'll have to see. But so far, they got kind of crushed by that whole situation with Tyron Smith. Now in the draft, they picked 24, 61, and 73, as you can see on the screen here. They're not going to draft a quarterback, right? They're probably not going to draft a tight end. I think they like Jake Ferguson. It's not off the table though. If like Brock Bowers somehow slid, Jerry at 24, he won't care, right? And if that happens, Brock Bowers will just basically play wide receiver anyway, and Jake Ferguson will be your inline tight end, like a little Kincaid Knox situation. It would destroy Jake Ferguson's value, but Jake Ferguson's value could also easily get destroyed if they draft a wide receiver at 24. So Jake Ferguson is one of those guys that's on the fence. If they do nothing, then he retains value, could have top 10, even top 5 upside as a top 2 target on the team. He was second this past year, only behind CeeDee Lamb. If they bring in another wide receiver that's even competing with targets for Ferguson, then his value's dust because he's just not super athletic. He's not going to be George Kittle and take a bunch of targets for 70, 80-yard touchdowns. It's just never going to happen for that particular fella. He's not that athletic. He's slow. He doesn't have long speed. That's the thing. So that's what we're watching for here with the Cowboys. They could draft a wide receiver. They could also draft a running back. This is a team, I said it in my free agency article on the Cowboys. They came out and said, we're going to take a cost conservative approach to the running back position. That to me says maybe bring back Rico Dowdle, who is still a free agent right now, and then draft a guy. And that's a pretty cost conservative approach. So this is a team I could see drafting like a Blake Corum or something like that. Again, the running back market's kind of difficult to sort through, right? Like Jonathan Brooks, he's got the injury, so he's going to come back slow. But anybody else could be the top guy. Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, whoever, you know what I mean? So we'll have to see there. But that's a great landing spot for a running back, no question. And again, they could draft a wide receiver. So this is a team that's interesting for fantasy for the draft. At 24, 61, 73, RB and wide receiver are on the board, and that is fun. For some of these teams, they're not going to do it. So it doesn't matter. Detroit Lions, next team here, alphabetical order. They've got a few picks here. They haven't really done much in free agency because there's not much they got to do. They have 2 great running backs, both under contract long-term, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. They've got their quarterback. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's a great wide receiver. They have Sam Laporta, who's a good wide receiver. Now they could sign a Matt Deutsch special in Josh Reynolds, bring him back as the outside split end. They have Jameson Williams as the field stretcher, right? And I think that's fine. Like he could be a full-time wide receiver, as Dan Campbell said. Dan Campbell said, hey, maybe Jameson Williams deserves to be a full-time guy this year. That would be swell. I would like that. If they don't, what they need to do is go out and I think either way, they should add a big outside wide receiver. That's the one piece this offense is missing, right? A big wide receiver to tether his foot to the line and fight the jam so that everybody else can run free and do their thing. Jameson Williams flying down the field, Amon-Ra St. Brown operating out of the slot. He doesn't even have to be particularly good. He doesn't have to be a target hog. He just has to be able to hold down that spot and require you to pay attention to him. And if it's a guy that can pull down jump balls, then great. But that's what the Lions should do, in my opinion. If there's none of them in free agency. They're not going to bring back DJ Chark. Chase Claypool, I mean, like, there's just not a lot of good options there. Yeah. I mean, could have been Mac Hollins better, boss, but I think Mac Hollins probably fits more into what Jameson Williams does. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking like they really need, it would have been great if they trade for T. Higgins, they'd have the most complete offense I've ever seen from a weapon standpoint. No question, because you got the big split end, you got the field stretching flanker in JMO, and you've got the Amon-Ra St. Brown slot flanker, and you've got Sam Laporta at tight end. It's like, it would be overkill, but that's what this team is missing. Right. So really, at 29, 56, 87, I think they could take a wide receiver, but they're probably going to work on the offensive line because, with Frank Ragnow with that inoperable toe issue, it's a great offensive line, but they could use at least one more piece there. And then defense. They need defense. So probably all 3 picks go to defense. I mean, we're a fantasy football show, but we have to be realistic from time to time. Shout out to the IDP guys. There could be some good picks in there for the Lions. So, that's it for the Lions. Just wanted to mention while we're at the halfway point here, the best way to take advantage of this stuff right now isn't actually Dynasty. You can in Dynasty, but the real best way to take advantage right now immediately is actually best ball. And we talk about FFPC being one of the best places to play Dynasty, if not the very best, in my opinion, the very best. But they have a best ball contest going right now. There you go. There's the details right there on the screen where you can win, $25,000, $10,000 grand prizes. And if you use promo code Coop, they'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more if you're a first-time depositor. And you can get in there and rock and roll right now. Look at that. QR code right there. Link in the description. You go get set up and do that now. This is where you take advantage of your hunches, right? Where you sit here and you say, hey, I don't think that the Cardinals are going to make a big move at wide receiver. So they're going to trade that pick to somebody to take a quarterback. So I'm going to take Michael Wilson right now because I think he's going to be a top target on the team, right? Or if you really think that they're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe you draft Marvin Harrison Jr. in your best ball draft. I think he's going like second round or so you got to pay up for him. But you can take advantage of your thoughts on the rookies. You can take advantage on these situations, right? You think Jake Ferguson is going to end up being a top 2 target again? Scoop him up. If you, like me, think that they might add a wide receiver, fade him out, right? This is where you can take advantage of all your hunches. And then you look back and you say, wow, I got that guy so cheap. And he ended up going to an amazing spot. Like if you drafted Curtis Samuel 2 days ago, boom, shakalaka. That's big money. So go over to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more. You can do best ball now. And then later on the show, we'll talk a little Dynasty. We'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, everything here applies mostly to Dynasty, but best ball is the best way to do it right now. And we're probably going to do some best ball drafts with the family. And I'm going to check and see what states, because the thing is, with some of the different sites we use for best ball, some states can't do them. Like our buddy Jerry in Hawaii can only do certain states. So I'm going to try and make sure we get everybody included this year. And we'll do them all over. We'll do FFPC. We'll do some of the others too. So yeah, there you go. Get set up there. Let's rock and roll. Green Bay Packers. That's the team we're on now. This team is already loaded at weapons, right? In my opinion, they could stand to trade a couple. Like it would really make our lives easier if they would trade one of the wide receivers and one of the tight ends, because all these guys are under contract, not just this year, but also next year. And a lot of them are under contract for the third year as well. Anyone they drafted last year is under contract for 3 years. So we're talking Jaden Reed and both tight ends, right? So this team, if you run 11 personnel every single snap, which is 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end, then you would have 4 weapons on the team on the field at the same time. This team has like 7. You can't possibly run a formation that uses Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Bo Melton, Luke Musgrave, and Tucker Kraft all at the same time. So if they would just trade Christian Watson and one of those tight ends away, that would be really nice. And I'll tell you what, it's not the first time we've seen it. The Ravens went out, they drafted Hayden Hurst in the first round, and then they circled back and drafted another tight end in the third round who happened to be Mark Andrews. So they traded away Hayden Hurst within a year or so. So that would just really be nice. For now, though, there's a log jam, right? So like we have to predict who's going to get the full-time snaps, who's not. This past year, when everyone was healthy, the guys playing the full snap share were Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Luke Musgrave. Jaden Reed was a part-time slot guy. Tucker Kraft was the backup tight end. So that's where you got to bet on the talent long-term. For the short-term, you have to focus on the opportunity, and those guys are the best bet to get opportunity based on Occam's razor. Last year, it was them. This year, it's probably them because those opportunities are earned in practice, not on Sunday. So you look at it and say, oh, this guy had a couple good catches on Sunday. He should start. It's practice where those jobs are earned, and that's why it's hard for them to get lost on a couple plays on Sunday, right? So Christian Watson, Doubs, I mean, that's just the way it is. And if you don't think they're super talented, then trade them away and wait for the long term. But for the short term, it's probably those guys, right? Running back is where they made a bunch of moves here. They cut Aaron Jones to save money, spent that money very quickly on Josh Jacobs, who they believe is an upgrade. And then they brought back A.J. Dillon, which was a little confusing to me, a little annoying. But, I mean, A.J. Dillon is what he is, dude. Even when Aaron Jones was hurt, he wasn't particularly great as the top guy. They brought in Patrick Taylor to catch passes like alongside him. So A.J. Dillon, if you could trade A.J. Dillon for anything at all, do it, But it's going to be hard because now he's a backup for Josh Jacobs. So they're all set for weapons. So you look at all these picks, 25, 41, 58, 88, 91. Those are all in the first 3 rounds. The Packers have done an incredible job here of getting young talent and picks. They could even trade some of their young talent. It's like we say, oh, trade some of this young talent to disperse it, disperse the wealth. But they have all these picks anyway already. So, like, it's just crazy. They can't even – and they have even more in the later rounds. They can't make all the picks. I think this is a team that could trade up and go for, like, a big pass rusher or a big, a great offensive tackle, offensive lineman. I know they lost, John Runyon and Bakhtiari. Like, they need linemen. Like, they should spend all these picks on linemen. So, boring for fantasy football. Let's do another team. On the Coop's Los Angeles Rams. Let's get them up here. Man, I would say one of the most underrated moves of this offseason was signing Demarcus Robinson to 1 year, $5 million, because I think that's a pretty good player, especially as your third wide receiver. And he can play split end. He can line up split end, like I was talking about with the Lions. He lines up foot tethered to the ground, bing bang, facing the jam. That means that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua can line up with a foot back off the ground, their foot off the line. They can go in motion. They get the space. They get the bumper. They can line up in the slot. Great guy to have on the team, and they got him for 1 year, $5 million. Dude, Demarcus Robinson's agent has to be looking around, being like, "Well, what did I do?" Because like $39 million for Gabe Davis and Darnell Mooney. Are you kidding me? And Demarcus Robinson for $5 million? What? My God. Like, dude, if he could go back, I know he likes it there and it's great for the Rams, but if he could go back, I imagine he would have got more than $5 million, even from the Rams, if now that we're seeing what these contracts look like. So I think it's great for them. They don't really need to do much at wide receiver. They have not added a running back, which is great for Kyron Williams. There was some concern that maybe they would bring in like an Austin Eckler as a pass catching back. I mean, Brian Robinson, Kyron Williams. I mean, it's possible. Kyron Williams did struggle in pass protection. He's survived this far, which is great for him. Wheels up for him. Now we just have to make sure in the draft they don't add anybody. They could though. At tight end, they bring in Colby Parkinson. Paid a lot of money for Colby Parkinson. I mean, got to respect it because now he could be the starting tight end for this team. He's going to compete with Davis Allen. Davis Allen is a big goon. Touchdown potential, but not fast. Runs like a 4.8. So not really a guy that I typically go for in fantasy, especially because they have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. How many targets is the tight end going to get anyway? But this team, because the reason they're competing is Tyler Higbee got hurt. He hurt his knee. He's going to miss the start of the season. So that's what you're looking at. I think this team could draft a running back. They could draft a tight end. It's on the table, right? If they draft a running back, Kyron Williams is still a good bet because he's going to be the starter. If anything, the running back could take away a little bit of pass work, but how often does a rookie running back come in and end up being really good in pass protection? Not really that often. So the scary guys like the Antonio Gibsons and the Austin Ecklers already got signed. So I'm actually, Kyron Williams, big winner so far, in my opinion. So yeah, that's it for the Rams. Those picks could be running back, tight end, but probably O-line and defense. But again, this is the kind of team that would do something like that. Minnesota Vikings, they, of course, looking like losers right now, lost Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson came out and says he wants Justin Fields. Instead, they signed Sam Darnold. I like Sam Darnold. I think it's worth giving him a shot. He was a guy I wanted to see land somewhere and compete. He signed for $5 million, so not that much money. Like Gardner Minshew got $25 million, $15 million guaranteed. He's like locked in as the starter almost certainly. Whereas Sam Darnold, $5 million, he might not win the job out, even with the guys he's competing with in-house, and they could draft somebody too. A lot of people are saying that they're going to try and get J.J. McCarthy one way or another. It's just a popular spot for him. I've been trying to figure out why, but I would like it. I think that would be great. I want to see them get a good quarterback because I want to root for Justin Jefferson and T.J. Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, and now also Aaron Jones, who's there. Like pocket passing J.J. McCarthy would be good for that team. They released Alexander Madison. He's yet to be signed. So this team I look at and I say they could draft a quarterback. They're probably not going to draft. It's not a good landing spot for a tight end, obviously. Not a good landing spot for wide receiver with Addison and Jefferson there, so we don't want that. They could draft a running back, because Aaron Jones is getting up there. It's a 1 year, $7 million deal for him. But that's why I think signs point to quarterback. They now have, pick 11, 23, 42. They can move up if they want to. So there you go. Quarterback and then maybe running back for this team. Probably not wide receiver or tight end with those early picks. For those joining us, what we're doing is we're going through every team and we're looking at what they did in free agency, and we're looking at what kind of draft capital they have in the first 3 rounds and how they could supplement their fantasy weapons that way. So next team, New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston gone. He went over to the Browns. Nathan Peterman's coming in. He could compete for backup. We'll have to see, but Derek Carr is a starter, so it doesn't really matter there. At wide receiver, Michael Thomas is out, right? He's almost certainly gone, which leaves you with Chris Olave, who's a locked-in stud. Have to feel good about Chris Olave and his opportunity, right? Rashid Shaheed, the question is whether he can be a full-time player. He's always going to be a good best ball pick because he can rip off big touchdowns at any given time. So Shaheed, we always like in best ball. The question is whether he can be a full every down player. And at this stage, we can't even say he's not big enough because Tank Dell is an every down player. Devonta Smith at his BMI is an every down player. So I don't think it's crazy. He could take a step forward. And I will say, with the new coaching staff, they probably want an inline two-way tight end. So Juwan Johnson, if you can sell Juwan Johnson, I'd probably try and do that too. They brought in Cedric Wilson, who's going to compete in the slot, but hard to say. And then A.T. Perry is a guy who now has an opportunity. When Michael Thomas got hurt last year, he stepped in and he was the every down split end for this team. So if you can sneaky buy for cheap A.T. Perry and Rashid Shaheed, I would do it. This is a team that could draft a wide receiver, but they have picks 14 and 45, as it says right here, and then they don't pick again until the 5th round, which fifth round wide receivers very rarely hit. Like the odds you're going to hit on a Stephon Diggs or a Puka Nacua is so low. It's almost not worth drafting them there. It's just, that's where you draft guys that play special teams. So if they don't take a wide receiver at 14, then I don't see it having that player having a major impact. Maybe at 45, but that's why I'm kind of interested for sure in A.T. Perry and Olave or whatever. And I don't know. Michael Thomas has said so much about this team. He does it every year. He complains about the quarterback, and he complains about the doctors and the staff there, and then they somehow bring him back, the training staff. So I think he's almost certainly gone, but I mean, nothing would surprise me. And then of course with Alvin Kamara, you got Alvin Kamara who's still under contract. You've got Kendre Miller, who they drafted last year. They probably just roll with what they have, but maybe they could draft a running back. If they do draft a running back, that's a big indictment on Kendre Miller, right? They also have Jamal Williams floating around still, so we'll have to see. But if they draft a running back because they think Kamara and Jamal Williams are gone and Kendre Miller is not the guy, that would be real bad for Kendre Miller. But I don't think they draft a running back. I think this is a team that drafts wide receiver and maybe a inline 2A tight end. New York Giants, next team up here. Lost Saquon Barkley, man. Big time sad for all the fans there. And I checked the subreddit, and sometimes they're like, hey, good luck. Hope you have fun. Thanks for all the memories. Not the Giants, dude. They're not treating Saquon Barkley that way. They are like, you're dead to me. Tiki Barber said, you are dead to us he came out and said it because he's still a big Giants guy. Going to the Eagles is, you got to expect that to happen. So this is a guy I thought cared. He cares a ton about his legacy, obviously cares about money too. And he's excited to be there. He's also said a couple of things that have stoked the flames. He came out when he was like, it's nice to be on the good side of the rivalry now. Ouch, dude. Fans don't like to hear that, man. So yeah, kind of burned his legacy bridge a little bit with the old fans there. Actually, a lot of it. But it doesn't matter. If he goes out and plays well and wins the Super Bowl with the Eagles, then he can just turn around and be like, hey, you know what? I do what's best for me, and I did, and it worked, so everyone has to eat it. So there you go. I'm Team Saquon on this matter 100%. Get your money, get your ring, and cement your legacy as a guy that's a very good player. I think he's a great player. With him gone, so he got signed to a big boy contract, like $30 million. They brought in Devin Singletary, much smaller contract. Of course, if you're going to let Saquon leave, you're not going to spend a bunch of money on somebody else. Motor comes in. He looked good last year with the Texans, but that's because the Texans were really good. So I don't know. I don't know how good the Giants are going to be. Their quarterback is coming off a serious injury. To supplement that, they went out and signed Drew Lock. This is something that we said exactly that they would do on the podcast with Jax Falcone. Go back and watch the episode we did on the Giants. Go read the article I wrote on the Giants. I said, this is the exact kind of player you want to bring in. I named guys like Drew Lock. I named Sam Darnold as another option. And then Jimmy G obviously was off the table once he got suspended. But this is why I love this pick, right? Is you bring in Drew Lock or Sam Darnold, who are, in my opinion, replacement level but serviceable guys that we've seen go out and play okay when needed, right? You put that guy next to Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones is much better than that guy. Then you say, okay, at least we know we have a guy here, right? If you put those guys together and it's even close, the competition, that might not mean that Drew Lock's the guy, but you at least learned that Daniel Jones isn't the guy. And now you can either move on from both of them, or just use Drew Lock, who's going to be a lot less expensive, right? So I think Daniel Jones, he's under contract. He's probably going to win out the job, but just bringing that guy in, man, really puts the pressure and helps you learn a lot. So I do really like that move for the Giants. They also signed Isaiah McKenzie. Makes all the sense in the world. Isaiah McKenzie played for Brian Daboll back with the Buffalo Bills. So they're bringing him in. He also got like suspended for misconduct at the end of last year by the Colts. And he was like tweeting that like he wants a Netflix documentary to tell all the crazy stuff about what went down. So I kind of want to know what happened. Like Isaiah, somebody, Netflix or somebody with a camera, go hit up Isaiah McKenzie. You know, I want to know what is going on with that guy, man. So yeah, get the Isaiah McKenzie story for us, please. They also got their revenge on the Eagles by signing Jack Stoll, right? They stole Jack from the Eagles. So there you go. Payback for Saquon Barkley. Blocking tight end Jack Stoll is now a Giant. He crossed the picket lines in the great war that Saquon Barkley started. It's all even now, right? Fair is fair. This team, man, they have picked 6, 39. Is there a chance Fields ends up in New York? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that. I don't think so now that they signed Locke because they kind of showed their hand. But I think every team that, because like a team will come around and say, hey, we want a second round pick for Justin Fields. And then everyone says no. And then they circle back around. They kind of have to come hat in hand at some point if nobody wants to pay that and say, okay, now the price is a third. And then they might have to circle back again. So if the Giants said no at first and made other plans, maybe when the price does end up being a third or a fourth, they say, hey, you know what? Now we're in, actually. So it's not crazy. It's not crazy, Gator J. So yeah, entirely possible. This team with this capital, 6, 39, 47, 70, 6, you could draft a quarterback at 6. No doubt about it. The other picks, 39, 47, 70, that's where this team could draft anything. Because Darren Waller has been talking about him retiring. He's also up there. He also has what has been described as a genetic hamstring issue. He also, which is interesting note, because he's like a recovering addict, won't do certain treatments. He definitely won't take any like Oxycontin or any opiates or anything like that. So he does have issues with his recovery as well because of that. You know, it's just part of the unfortunate situation there. So, you know, this team could draft a quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, or running back. Nothing is off the table for this team. So the Giants are very interesting one in the draft because they have the capital and they could use it all. I doubt they're obviously not going to take a running back at 6, or I mean, probably not Brock Bowers either, to be honest. But it's not crazy for them to take a quarterback or wide receiver at 6, which is fun till Daddy takes the T-Bird away. Eagles next team here. They obviously signed Saquon Barkley. Yay, hooray. Not, in my opinion, not an amazing landing spot for fantasy football because they don't throw it to the running back a ton. It's not just Jalen Hurts' fault. Nick Sirianni notably calls way fewer running back screens than Doug Peterson did with the same exact players. Like with Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, Doug Peterson called like 40 screens to those 2 players alone in the last year that, you know, with Carson Wentz in the gang when he was here. Nick Sirianni, to those same 2 players in the last year for those guys, it was like 11, right? It's noticeably different. He likes tight end screens to God, or he likes the wide receiver screens. So keep that in mind. Obviously, with Saquon Barkley, you're going to dial him up some stuff, but good chance that he isn't as involved as much in the pass game. It's just entirely possible. And of course, this team is the best quarterback sneak team in the league, right? I know Jason Kelsey retired, but they're not going to stop running QB sneaks. So just don't keep that in mind. Jalen Hurts is going to score rushing touchdowns. There's no doubt about it, right? It doesn't have to be 12 to be a problem for Saquon Barkley. If it's 5, that's a problem for Saquon Barkley. That's reality. This team also, they brought in Devontae Parker. People might say, ew, whatever, stinks. But they don't have to pay because he had the same offset language in his contract that Russell Wilson did. So the Patriots are on the hook for like $4 million of that contract. They only have to pay the $1.2 million veteran minimum. So they get Devontae Parker for free. I mean, you know what? For a team that is like trying people out at wide receiver 3 after A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, not a bad deal. They lost Marcus Mariota to Washington. They lost Jack Stoll, as we talked about, stolen honor by the Giants. Payback time for Saquon Barkley. So, yeah, there you go. This team could draft a wide receiver. Not a good landing spot for wide receiver, as we know. They have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. They could draft a tight end. we have to keep in mind that teams like a lot of these teams, we've seen the inside of the Ravens like war room. We know what they do. They have like a numeric system where they basically say this guy's worth. There are 20 guys we were drafting in the first round, and if one of those guys isn't available, they trade back or they just take him, no matter who it is, right? So like they'll take Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kohler, even if they have Mark Andrews, if that's the best guy available and they can't trade out. So teams like the Eagles, if looking at Dallas Goedert, that's not going to stop them from taking a tight end. So it's a bad landing spot for tight end, but it's entirely possible. So keep that in mind with the teams, all these teams, they will take the best player available. That's what you should do in your dynasty league too. I talk about this all the time. The biggest mistake you can make is drafting a player and saying to yourself, the only reason I took that guy is because I needed a running back. I've done that myself. And I regret it every time. That's how you draft Justice Hill and Keyshawn Vaughn, because you quote unquote need a running back or you need a quarterback or whatever. Draft the best players available and then trade, because when you need a wide receiver and draft a wide receiver, if that dude sucks, now you have nothing. If you just take the best player available, now you have something and you can trade it, right? If you draft a N'Keal Harry, then you have nothing. So just be very careful with that stuff. There you go. What would the Giants give up to get Fields? Picks 39 and 47, probably. At least a second round pick. They're not giving up pick 6. I'll tell you that. That would be dumb for sure. So yeah, if they were going to do that, sorry, I missed that question earlier. So yeah, there you go. And since we're talking Dynasty, might as well get this out there. If you want to play Dynasty, if you haven't played yet, it's hard to like get a good league together of people like buddies or whatever, and then say, oh, everyone's got to pay and everyone's got to pay attention. Usually you can get like 7 people that actually care, and the rest are fill-ins, and they mess up the whole league because they don't want to trade, they don't pay attention, right? So if you're looking for a serious place to play, go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more, and you can go over there and you can either do a startup draft where you draft in from scratch, draft in a brand new team, rookies, everything included, or you can adopt an orphan team where you go in and take a team that somebody gave up on, and that's a lot of fun because you separate the players you like from the ones you don't, and now you got a bunch of trade chips and pieces, and that's a true measure of how good of a fantasy player you are if you can take one of these orphan teams and battle back to win, man. So yeah, FFPC, really cool place to play. There you go, right there. You can use the QR code, get set up. It also supports the show. So if you're looking for a place to play and want to support me, use promo code Coop. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more, and you can play best ball, you can play Dynasty. And if you're a Fantasy Alarm member, just hit me up in the Discord on Coop's Corner and post your team. Whatever. I say this all the time. I'm like, you have direct access to me. Go to Coop's Corner in the Discord as a Fantasy Alarm member, and we can talk about whatever. We can talk about, watches, shoes, sunglasses, whatever you want to talk about. But I like talking about football mostly. And you can post your new team in there and I'll fix it up, right? I'll help you with it and we'll win some money together. It'll be a good time. So use promo code Coop, myffpc, and get set up now at fantasyalarm.com in the Discord. Let's go. All right, let's get through the last couple teams here. I don't want to keep you guys too late, but we got a few teams left. San Francisco 49ers. They lost Sam Darnold. Figured that would happen because if I'm Sam Darnold, I look at Geno Smith and now the contract, who just got him? Baker Mayfield, right? Like these guys were backups, right? Everyone was like, oh, this guy's going to be a backup from here on out. Now they are gazillionaires, right? Geno Smith got $75 million. Dude, his kids are set for life. You buy a couple of gas station ground leases and you're good, generational wealth, right? Like Baker Mayfield is now crazy rich. So Sam Darnold looks at that and says, why would I be the backup here if I can try and be the backup somewhere else? So he's gone, right? Charlie Warner signed a pretty good deal with the Falcons to be their inline blocking tight end. Ross Dwelly's probably on the way out as well. That means behind George Kittle, the 2 rookies they drafted last year, Cameron Latu on the passing side and Braden Willis on the blocking side. All right, I had to dig deep for that one. Braden Willis on the blocking side now have an opportunity to do something if George Kittle goes down. Cameron Latu, more interesting for fantasy football than Braden Willis. So jot that down. Ray McLeod, their return guy extraordinaire, was signed away. We talked about that already with the Atlanta Falcons, meaning they're going to need somebody to return punts and kicks. Maybe Danny Gray does something for once. He can return punts. So we'll have to see on that, but not that big deal for fantasy football. Brandon Ayuk, there's trade rumors running around, but the reality with this team is if they just keep the band together, they're good. They have their tight end. They have 2 wide receivers that are awesome. They use a fullback, so they don't need a really good third wide receiver. So Juwan Jennings doesn't matter, right? Like he doesn't play a full snap share. And then they've got Brock Purdy on he's getting paid $1 million. Next year also gets paid $1 million. So yeah, I mean, there you go. Yeah, Jeremy, I see Eric Kendricks dead. Yeah, that's rough off season for him, man. And I will say, if you want to talk IDP stuff, we do that as well. I'm not a big IDP guy, but we got Iggy Gilbert, dude, crushes at IDP. He also crushes with his basketball picks. Like for this time of year, he's crushing basketball, but he kills with IDP. He writes some stuff for us, hangs out in the Discord too. So check in with Iggy if you want to talk IDP. I dabble a little bit, but again, like I'm not going to give advice. Like on kickers, I point you to Lindelians because she does all the research. With tight end, I'll answer every single question. Running back, wide receiver, quarterback, that's what I do. IDP, I play a little bit, but I'm not going to start trying to give you crazy advice. Like I play fantasy baseball and I'm great at it, but we have Jim Bowden and Howard Bender. Jim Bowden was an actual GM. So I'm going to point you in the direction of the guys that are like our super studs in that capacity. Like I like NASCAR and I root for Kyle Busch and I made actually a lot of money on NASCAR, but Matt Sells is the 3-time NASCAR Writer of the Year. So if you want to talk NASCAR, I'll talk with you. But if you want advice, I'll point you to Matt Sells. Same with IDP. Iggy Gilbert, boom, shakalaka. All right. So yeah, the 49ers, they could draft a wide receiver, picks 31, 63, 94. I don't really see. If they do, that tells you that Brandon Ayuk is probably on the way out. You're going to have to wait for that wide receiver to get his chance, but I would be interested in that player for sure if they do draft one and that the writing's on the wall. So that's about it. IDP GOAT, Aaron Donald. Yeah, Aaron Donald, absolute monster. Shout out Aaron Donald. What a beast, dude. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks. That's next in alphabetical order. Yeah, Seattle Seahawks after San Francisco. They lost Colby. They had 3 free agent tight ends. They let Colby Parkinson leave to the Rams. They let Will Disley leave to the Chargers. They kept Noah Fant. No offense to him, but they have 3 good wide receivers. So what's the opportunity there for the short term? Even if Tyler Lockett were to be gone, he restructured his contract to stay. But even if he would be gone, it would still be Metcalf and JSN as the top targets on the team. So Noah Fant, like I really want him to go somewhere else. His value would go up. He stayed. He stayed at the worst landing spot possible for a tight end. So yeah, trade him if you can because he got a lot of money. People sometimes look at that and they're like, oh, all the other tight ends are gone. He's the starting tight end. Now he's got to be better now. And maybe he will be a little better. Trade him. Trust me. Done this a million times. Trade that guy. It's not a good spot for targets. If all those guys are fantasy relevant, Metcalf, Lockett, and JSN, and Noah Fant, that means that Geno Smith went out and did a 2013 Peyton Manning and threw 55 touchdown passes. So if even 3 of those guys are relevant, that means that it doesn't matter who has those guys because whoever has Geno Smith won your league. So that's the way you got to look at it, dude. It's not realistic to have that many fantasy relevant assets without somebody getting hurt. Just the way it goes. So there you go. This team maybe they draft a quarterback if they're feeling, they have pick 16 and 81. So not a lot of capital. That pick 16 is their really only chance to do something meaningful. And I don't foresee it at fantasy for fantasy purposes. They have 2 good running backs already. So they have 2 good running backs, 3 wide receivers, a quarterback they like, and a tight end they like. So, use that pick somewhere else. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their focus has been keeping the band together, and that band went to the playoffs and won a game. So pretty good band. Baker Mayfield, back. Mike Evans, back. Chase Edmonds, back. Who cares? Cade Otton played really well in the playoffs. He will probably be the starting tight end. They do have picks to make something happen, but they like Trey Palmer too, so I don't think they draft a wide receiver. This is what really scares me is that they're good at wide receiver. They have their quarterback. I think Cade Otton is a fine tight end. This is a team that could draft a running back. And if you go and look at the comments from their head coach, I don't know why it's escaping me right now. But if you go look at the comments from him, he basically said, we want to try and take the load off Rachaad White. When you hear that, that is bad news for fantasy purposes. especially because they have all these picks and there are running backs floating around out there. The fact that they didn't sign one is great. He's a short-term winner so far, but the draft is the last hurdle for Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White's going to be fine regardless, but we're talking about this ceiling he has of last year. He got every single snap. Nobody. Todd Bowles, thank you so much in the chat. Todd Bowles, the coach, said they could potentially bring in another guy to take the load off him a little bit. So just be very careful with that. That's the scariest thing for Rachaad White. But I think I would rather have him go up against anyone in this rookie class than have them sign a Derrick Henry or a Austin Eckler. And now we know exactly how it's going to be split. So there you go. Last team here. I know we're going a little overtime. Thank you guys for staying with me. Thank you, Matt Deutsch behind the glass, for hanging out a little bit over, but important information, man. Important information. We're going to do the AFC next time around. But last team, NFC side, Washington Commanders. New regime, man. Dan Snyder, Gonzo, smell you later, dude. Magic Johnson and the boys are in town now, and they're going to get their quarterback here. It was always them pretending that Sam Howell had a chance. Well, they set him up for failure. They traded away both their best two defensive players last year. They carried a ton of dead cap instead of signing guys to help Howell. Like, he was set up for failure their entire time. So they have a ton of money, and they have picks. As you can see, 2, 36, 40, 67, 78, 100. No team had a bigger combination of equity than this team when you add up the draft capital and the money, right? So they haven't really spent too much money. They're doing pretty well, but they lost Curtis Samuel to the Bills. They lost Antonio Gibson to the Patriots. They lost Jacoby Brissett to the Patriots, right? They kept Jamison Crowder. People are like, why are they signing Jamison Crowder? Jamison Crowder returned every single punt for the team last year. 37 punts for Jamison Crowder. Every single one. That's what he's going to do again this year. And also with Curtis Samuel gone, he could mix in a little bit in the slot, So good to keep him around. They signed Austin Eckler. This is bad for Brian Robinson because we know that when the roles are divvied up, Brian Robinson is going to be the early down. Austin Eckler is going to be the pass down. Passes are more valuable in fantasy football across the board. I mean, even in standard, Scott Barrett did the study. Even in standard, a target, not even a reception, a target is worth 1.4 times as much as a carry. And in full PPR, that's like well over two times as much. So we want those targets. Targets make the world go round in all formats, which does hurt for Brian Robinson. Now for Brian Robinson, you need this team. If he's going to be the goal line touchdown back, like, you're going to need to see this team be really good. Like, you're going to need to see them come out and do what the Lions did when Jamal Williams, as just the early down back, got 18 touchdowns. LeGarrette Blount in PPR finished as RB like 7 or 8 once when he only caught 7 passes, but it's because he was on the Patriots and he scored 18 touchdowns. So that's how Brian Robinson can have high upside with Austin Eckler there now, unless Eckler gets hurt. Really crushed his value. So it'd be hard to trade him now with the news, but if you can get away with trading Brian Robinson, I would do it. So there you go. They signed Zach Ertz at tight end. That doesn't stop them from drafting a tight end. So, they have Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson at wide receiver. That doesn't necessarily stop them from drafting a wide receiver, but I don't think they go crazy. So I think at 2, they draft a quarterback. That's what I'm foreseeing here. I don't care who it is. As a Patriots fan, I'm hoping that all these teams screw up and the Patriots get a good quarterback at 3. But, as an unbiased fantasy analyst, whoever they take at 2 will probably, assuming, for me, draft capital is such a big indicator for quarterback. It's the number one indicator of success. I almost certainly will have the top quarterbacks ranked in the order they're picked. That's just the way it goes. If it's close at all, then I skew mobility, right? Because mobile quarterbacks are more valuable in fantasy football, but Drake May and Jaden Daniels are both mobile, right? So maybe if JJ McCarthy goes 2, I might change my mind a little bit, but hard to say because the most important thing for Dynasty is that your quarterback is a quarterback in the league, right? Like, look at Mac Jones and Zach Wilson, right? Like, all we care about first and foremost is that they succeed. And then we can start talking about upside and rushing and all that stuff, right? Like Justin Fields, his value's falling through the floor too. Trey Lance, everyone drafted Trey Lance because he was mobile, and that was going to be the difference maker. Well, the first difference maker is just being a quarterback in the NFL. So this team signed Zach Ertz, and I think they could draft a tight end. I I was hoping Cole Turner would get an opportunity, but so we'll have to see. Quarterback at 2, and then after that, they'll probably do a lot of best player available, like you do when you're starting over with a new franchise. So that's it. That's the NFC. All the teams there. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, man. Always a good time, man. I love this show because it's like I don't have to worry about guests. I don't have to worry about people interviewing me. Like it's just us talking ball, getting to the bottom of this stuff. 1 hour in and out, and now it's time for the weekend. I mean, I still have work to do. I know some of you guys do too, but it's close enough, right? You know what? You guys all have permission to go home early today. Take this clip it right now, print it out, hand it to your boss, and say, "Hey, you know what? I got to leave early today. I got Coop. He worked us over with an hour straight of talking ball NFC, and I'm just sleepy. I need a nap. So this is my doctor's note. I got to go home early today. So there you go. Jump out early. And what you should do, go to my FFPC, use promo code Coop, get set up there. Since you have the rest of the day off, do a little best ball draft, do a little startup draft, save an orphan team from the clutches of terrible owners. That's what we like to do at my FFPC. That's it for me. Thank you in the chat. Thank you, Matt Deutsch behind the glass. We will catch you next Wednesday with a guest. We might do a best ball draft next Wednesday. And then next Friday, I'll do this crazy show again, except with the AFC next time. So thank you, everybody. We're out.